Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Wild at Work. Today, we would like to welcome Joey Park, Legislative Program Coordinator with Texas Wildlife Association, along with a colleague of his that will be joining us today. As Joey goes through his presentation, please list or type any comments or questions that you have in the chat. I'll be keeping record of those as we go through, and we'll have a short question and answer at the end of our presentation. Joey, I'm going to stop my screen share and go ahead and let you guys take over your screen share from here. And Mignon, if you'd like to screen share, or before you do so, I guess if Joey, you'd like to introduce yourself and tell us a quick
Course.
bit about you.
Of course. Thank you. Megan, thank you so much. Thanks for inviting us to be a part of one of these webinars here at Chat and Chew, Lunch and Learn, however you'd like to describe them. It is my privilege today to be here as a advocacy director for the Texas Wildlife Association. Just as a measure of my background, I spent nearly the last 40 years working in and around the Texas State Capitol. Started my career at the Comptroller of Public Accounts with then Lieutenant Governor Bob Bullock. Worked on his campaigns and ultimately ended up over in the Texas Senate back in the early 90s. And after a while there, I went out to Parks and Wildlife, where I was the director of legislative affairs, working as a liaison between Parks and Wildlife Department and the Texas legislature. I did that for about 10 years before starting my lobby practice in the early 2000s, and was privileged more than 20 years ago to be hired by the Texas Wildlife Association to work as their lobbyist in Austin. And I've been doing that, as I said, for a little more than 20 years. I've enjoyed every minute of it, and it's something that is very dear to my heart, the things that we advocate for and the people that we are advocating with and alongside for the folks that are out there managing the habitat and the animals on the landscape. I'm also very privileged to have working alongside me Mignon McGarry. Mignon, also a longtime fixture at the Texas State Capitol, one of the most trusted and respected individuals in that building. I can tell you from my years of working with Mignon, she is loved, respected, and is one of the most knowledgeable people. And we are extremely lucky to have Mignon working in our efforts at the Capitol. So that kind of brings us to where we are today. We have wrapped up the 89th legislature back in June, a couple of months ago. Beginning in January, the Texas legislature came together and the 89th legislature convened. The one notable thing that occurred this session, which doesn't occur every session, was we got a new Speaker of the House. Previous Speaker Dade Phelan from Beaumont stepped aside, and this session, the members of the legislature elected State Representative Dustin Burrows from Lubbock to be Speaker of the House. Dustin Burrows has been a member of the legislature for probably, I don't know, Mignon, almost 10 years. Highly respected individual who works across party lines and is good for Texas Wildlife Association. I can tell you that we were very pleased to see him elected as Speaker of the House. And for those who are unfamiliar with or don't follow the legislative process, coming along with a new speaker comes new committee chairs and membership of those committees. Speaker Burrows started, hit the ground running, and within a few weeks, it started naming committees. The committee that Texas Wildlife Association finds ourselves in the most would be the Cultural Recreation Tourism Committee. Issues related to parks and wildlife, issues related to hunting, fishing, outdoor activities all find their way through and into the Culture, Recreation, Tourism Committee in the House of Representatives. Also, in that body, we find ourselves in front of the Agriculture and Livestock Committee. Speaker Burrows named longtime TWA supporter and past chairman of CRT some years ago, State Representative Ryan Guillen from down in the valley was named to chair the Ag and Livestock Committee in the House. So that was good for us too. We had some friends there. Let me back up. Culture, Recreation, Tourism Committee. State Representative Will Metcalf was named to chair that committee. Representative Metcalf is from Conroe. Representative Metcalf has been a longtime friend of TWA, and Chairman Metcalf continues to be that chair. We got very lucky with the naming of Chairman Metcalf. He is a level-headed, straight-thinking, openly communicating individual, and I couldn't be happier. I know he reached out to Mignon and myself, as well as others at TWA, anytime there were issues that were before the committee, bills that popped up, bills that were up for a hearing. Those members of that committee and the chairman and his staff were constantly communicating with us. One of the best sessions with regard to committee makeup that we've had in quite some time. I couldn't be more pleased about where that ended up. The Senate began their session. There was a couple of new members over in the Texas Senate, but there weren't any big wholesale changes to the committees that we find ourselves working in over there. Normally, our stuff ends up in the Senate Water, Ag, and Rural Affairs Committee, which is chaired by Senator Perry, also from Lubbock. Another friend of the departments, another friend of Texas Wildlife Association, a long-standing friendship that we've had with him going back many, many years. So we were very pleased that there were no changes over in the Texas Senate either. So as we got started during session, going back almost to November, bill filing, the bills that are filed by the members of the legislature, that actually starts a couple of months before session begins. And so starting back in November of 2024, we started tracking these bills. I can tell you that the 89th legislature filed 11,500 pieces of legislation, an all-time record. And it's up to Mignon and myself and her staff, Nicole Lopez, that you see sitting beside her, who was a tremendous help during session, to read these bills, look at them, make sure there's no negative effect or positive effect, however you would like to describe it. And if there is a relation to the things that we do and care about, then we put them on our bill track. And we will track that piece of legislation as it moves through the process. And subsequently, over the course of bill filing, I bet we were tracking, I don't know, Mignon, 200 or 300 pieces of legislation at a minimum that could or would have an effect on the membership of TWA and the things that are important to us. So that being said, kind of sets the stage, with what and how we're prepared to go down to the legislature and start that process. One of the first things that we do before things get really going too fast, Mignon, if you want to throw up, or Nicole, if you want to throw up that first page, one of the first things that we spend our time organizing is called Boots on the Ground every session at the beginning. So usually in the first week of February, before the legislature gets too wound up, we like to bring TWA membership and leadership to the Capitol and walk the halls and talk to the members of the legislature, their staff. We set up meetings with a variety of offices and members. We try to pair people who are coming to join us at Boots on the Ground with their legislator, their state representative or senator in their district where they live, as best we can. We try to communicate. There you can see in that picture on the right, there's Chairman Metcalf with Justin and Steve and Jackie and Mary Pearl. And the picture next to him, we have Senator Flores, Senator Colcourse, as well as a bunch of the group that were there for Boots on the Ground. We get in there before they get too busy. We get in there before committee hearings get too wound up and get some one-on-one FaceTime with the members of the legislature or their staff and communicate our philosophies as with those offices. We ask them if they have any questions about the things that we do know are coming along in terms of bills. Tell them what we think is important and open up that line of communication so that going through session, we can serve as a resource for those elected officials, their staff. If something comes up wildlife related or landowner related that they need help with or seek information about, we serve as that resource. All of our members do, but our leadership and Mignon and I are there every single day and trying to serve, as that conduit between the TWA and the legislature. So and we had a really good day, I can tell you. The members were very happy to see us. The members were glad to hear from us. And we got feedback for several weeks about how pleased they were that TWA was there in their offices and communicating with them. We're going to kind of run through some of the bills that we found in front of us this session. Some good, most of them bad. I can tell you, out of 11,500 pieces of legislation filed, most of them do not pass. Only about, 1,200 or so pieces of legislation actually pass and make it to the governor's desk. So most of the things that you'll see on these lists didn't make it to the governor's desk, and that's probably a good thing. The Texas legislature and the process that it follows is set up for legislation to die, I guess you'd say. In order for a bill to make it to the governor's desk, it's got to be of such importance to rise above the other 11,499 bills to be important enough to make it through the entire process, through the House, through the Senate, through all the committee hearings, and subsequently to the governor's desk, and be signed. There's another process there where the governor can veto it, and our current governor has been very happy to veto a lot of pieces of legislation. So fortunately, none of ours lately. But as you can see there, brackish water, one of the things that we communicated when we were there for Boots on the Ground was our focus on groundwater, not only fresh groundwater, but brackish groundwater as well. There have been some efforts in the past sessions, and certainly was this session, to treat brackish groundwater a little bit differently. But the idea is that, people aren't using it, people can't use it. Let's redefine it. Let's re-regulate it in a little bit different way and utilize it for brackish water desal or any other type process that they feel would be benefited. But what that does, and what we always have to protect, is the owner of that land owns that groundwater beneath it. And any efforts to diminish that ownership or to change a definition of that water molecule in a way that would diminish landowners' ownership of those of that resource, we are going to fight against that. And I can tell you that we were there. Justin was testifying on the brackish water bill, and I don't think that Senator Perry, who was the author of that bill, really intended to take away landowner rights or change the definition, but he's trying to solve some water problems in the state. some big water problems, and this is one of them. But sometimes unintended consequences have a a very adverse effect on things. And I can tell you, I'm pleased to report that that bill did not pass in the form that it was filed and moved through the process. Representative Garcia had it over in the House, the same bill. Again, that bill, neither of those bills moved along. Cell cultured protein, for those who aren't familiar with, in the labs these days, there are companies which grow beef and chicken and seafood from a cellular based process. We The bill that Senate Bill 261 was an effort of the Texas and Southwest cattle raisers to protect cattle ranchers in this state. And fortunately, that bill did pass. So what we have done is kind of banned the process here in Texas for right now. I think there were some folks who were getting out a little bit ahead of what should be going on in there. And so that's an issue that's not going away. It'll be back. But for right now, we've just kind of put the brakes on that. One of the things that, and sorry, just kind of jumping ahead, one of the things that we find ourselves working on continuously at the legislature at TWA is efforts related to chronic wasting disease. I can tell you that prior to the legislative session this year, TWA leadership, Jonathan Lett, and the Texas Deer Association leadership sat down and negotiated some agreed to ideas or processes related to what may or may not have come up in the legislature, but based around the rules package that was passed by Parks and Wildlife back in January related to ear tags and deer movement and chronic wasting disease management. For the first time in many, many, many years that I can remember, we were on the same page with the Texas Deer Association with regards to this stuff, and it was actually very refreshing to think we weren't going to be butting heads with that group. So what does normally happen, though, irrespective of that, any agreements that we had, members of the legislature will file bills that they think are helpful sometimes. And almost always in every session, there are members of the legislature who will file bills which diminish Parks and Wildlife's ability to manage chronic wasting disease across the landscape. I think, anybody that's followed this disease and the regulations that govern it know that it's a very contentious process, and the ideas around it are definitely not agreed to by most of the people out there. Some think it's a very serious disease like we do, and others do not, and find that the regulation and the laws imposed upon that business to be overbearing. So we've got some members of the legislature who in almost every session will file bills taking away the department's ability, Parks and Wildlife Department, that is, ability to manage that disease, to enforce the regulations that are already on the books, and to further expose the wild herd out there to what could be a spreading disease problem out there if you stop looking for it. So there was probably almost, I don't know, 30 bills that were related in some way or another to chronic wasting disease, but the ones listed here are very specific to it. And I can tell you with great pleasure that none of those bills even came up for a committee hearing this year. Our chairmans Perry and Metcalf recognized the folly of some of this stuff as it relates to diminishing Parks and Wildlife's authority or ability to manage that disease. And those bills never saw the light of day, and that was good. Usually we find ourselves at least defending the department's practices in a committee hearing, which has been come to be known as Deer Day, when these bills come up in the House. We did not have a Deer Day this session, but that's first time in a long time that we haven't had one of those all day, all night hearings over the management of deer. Um, Clicking down some of the things that we were watching, and Representative Metcalf, our chairman, passed a bill relating to daylight savings time. I know there's also a federal component to that, but that bill for the first time has finally made it to the governor's desk and was signed, so that if the federal government makes some changes, and I don't get me started on what it takes to change it to daylight savings time, but one of the first steps to do that has actually been accomplished. You also see more deer legislation. We had a bill by Senator Kolkhorst that would have changed the way deer breeder release sites manage their fences. I can tell you that the agreements that we had with the Texas Deer Association previous to session, those agreements did fall apart as session got going, and we found ourselves once again at odds with that association on some of the legislation that was moving around, including the one by Senator Kolkhorst. And that's unfortunate. That would have been a good bill for the department, but it just didn't come to pass. There were a few others that we thought were good bills for deer, stacked penalties to enhance penalties on bad operators. That was another bill that was initially agreed to by the deer breeding industry, but subsequently they've kind of backed away from that. And ear tags, it list goes on and on. We have always, or not always, in the past few sessions, foreign ownership of property, limiting the number, the foreign ownership of state land, not state land, but property in the state of Texas. I think the governor has the ability now to determine if a foreign entity is affected by that law. We had bills filed that would have limited game wardens' abilities to access private land. Fortunately, as you see, these bills did not pass. The game warden bill never came up for a hearing again, which is a further testament to the chairman of CRT. I mean, it's not easy to go tell a member of the legislature, we're not even going to have a hearing on your bill. But, sometimes that's the best thing. And Chairman Metcalf was hugely helpful in diminishing some of the consternation that sometimes goes on. Parks and Wildlife had a bill relating to the protection of the information as we move into a more digital world where we're tagging our deer, turkeys, and other big game with a digital tag. We need to make sure that the information that's contained in that process is protected. And with the state agency, a lot of information that they have and use is subject to the open records request. But this bill 1248 by Senator Perry makes sure that if you're filling out a digital tag for game that you've harvested on private property, that none of that information would be subject to an open records request or any other access by Freedom of Information Act or anything like that. Renewable energy of recent sessions has been something that's at the forefront. I can tell you that it's usually a big fight. The renewable energy entities are very well staffed and funded, and they don't want to see any laws passed or regulations made that would inhibit the ability of them to continue to build either wind or solar energy facilities. There was one bill that was passed by Representative Vasut, which will limit um, some of the development uh, in and around national wildlife refuges and adjacent areas. We supported that bill, and we're pleased to see that it passed. Um, and there were a few other um, municipal regulation. You know, there's always an effort by the cities to um, creep out into the landscape where our members live and operate in order to impose what the city thinks are important regulations onto people who've been doing something for sometimes hundreds of years. And it's always been our position as an association to support our landowners against any municipal creep. And we had a couple of bills this session that were helpful in that regard. Uh, the non-resident hunting license, I think we've got a commission meeting coming up here in a couple of weeks where the Parks and Wildlife will be implementing and consolidating non-resident hunting license. This was a Parks and Wildlife bill, kind of a cleanup bill. They were in trying to clean up their license process. We supported that bill. Ownership of pore space and brine. Again, this kind of like that brackish issue. Trying to redefine what's going on underneath the surface of the land for the purposes of extraction or utilization of resources is something we are going to be always very focused on. And there were some efforts to redefine what's going on under the ground in the pore spaces under private land, and neither of those bills passed, so that was good. There was the landowner community was in unification there about not changing that. Um, oysters is always a fun one. I can tell you that this past session it was all good. We didn't have any bad oyster bills. Senator Kolkhorst and Vasut and Hunter all having bills which mostly affected our oyster farming industry, our burgeoning mariculture industry. So that was good, helping those newly established farmers out there to get going, to stay in business, provide them some tax relief if certain things are done, as well as limit some of the regulations that are put upon them. So that was good. We were glad that to see those pass, and a big thanks to Senator Kolkhorst and Representative Hunter, coastal members that have long supported our oyster industry. I think we all know how important the oysters are to the ecosystems that they reside in down there, cleaning and filtering that water. Raffles, for the second session in a row, we tried to pass a bill which would have it would legalize the ability for nonprofit wildlife organizations to sell raffle tickets online via social media. I think most people don't even realize that's not a thing. We passed it last session in the 88th legislature. The governor vetoed it for arbitrary reasons that had nothing to do with the bill. We made an effort to pass it again this session. Unfortunately, it got kind of bogged down with the lottery meltdown. There's been some issues going on over at the lottery, and it kind of conflicted with what was going on there, and the legislature didn't see fit to address that issue again. Saltwater stamp tightened up the uses for the revenue that is generated from saltwater stamps. That something that was a good thing. Tax bills, there was a variety of tax bills that we were following, including exempting exotic animals from sales tax. A lot of these bills, people don't realize things are either legal or illegal until you get a bill filed and find out that in fact, something is one way or another. And these bills that we've been working on this session were an effort to correct some of that stuff. Um, we are, as an association, are always on the lookout for, always watching for your wildlife ag valuation to make sure that whether you're in uh, ag valuation, wildlife, timber, whatever the case may be, whatever 1D1 valuation you're using on your property, that doesn't get affected by the legislature. A lot of times people look at that and want to tweak with those laws, and we are always going to be there to make sure that that doesn't happen. So nothing bad happened this session with regards to tax bills. And um, one of the things that we did work on this session, unfortunately, the Texas Farm and Ranch Lands Conservation Program, there was a bill by Representative Ashby which kind of tightened the use of that money, but sadly, we got no additional revenue for that program for Parks and Wildlife. We were asking for an additional $28 million. Parks and Wildlife had that in their legislative appropriations request. The $2 million that's been funded there for the last few biennium did remain, so it didn't get completely cut out. But even though the bill relating to the use and the qualification of those lands within that program got tweaked a little bit, we didn't get the extra money we were looking for. Water legislation, there was a slew of water bills, ladies and gentlemen, this past session. Senator Perry was leading the charge for water this past session, along with State Representative Cody Harris over in the House, to create a funding mechanism for water development, creation of new water through whatever means, whether it's desal, brackish desal, fixing leaky pipes, creating a more efficient system across the landscape there. And so we're going to see $1 billion a year funded to the Texas Water Development Board for that exact purpose. There was a handful of other bills that kind of went along with that, but the main focus of that effort is going to be an effort to create a 20-year fund for development of water, including fixing leaky pipes and supposedly looking at new water or conservation measures. So that's an issue that is not going to go away anytime soon. It's something that we're going to always be fighting for the landowners on. Wildfires, in the past few years, we've seen really, really bad wildfires up in the Panhandle, specifically out in Round Mountain last year. So any efforts needed to help with rural fire prevention and that process, we're going to certainly be in support of, and we were this session. We saw some good bills filed, and most of those bills did pass in one form or the next. Couple of wildlife bills. See, there's one by Senator Blanco, 1245, which is going to allow for landowners to recover some of the costs associated with managing aoudads on their property, primarily out in West Texas, using helicopters to manage those aoudad populations that have exploded out on the landscape out there. So the legislature has added aoudads to the list of animals that can be hunted from helicopters, and those costs recovered by that landowner. That includes feral hogs and coyotes. Now it includes aoudads. few other bills, transfer of authority, moving disease stuff. That one didn't go anywhere. Um, we had a few bills to Parks and Wildlife. I'm just kind of running through some of these. One thing that was of great notice this past session, a new representative, Representative Curry, had filed a bill which abolished Parks and Wildlife Department as a whole and transferred their functions to other agencies. I can tell you that bill was not well received by most members of the legislature, including leadership, governor. That bill didn't go anywhere, and uh, when he was quietly told that that was a really bad idea to try to do something like that, and he subsequently backed away from that bill very quickly. Hopefully that's not something we'll ever see again. Um, Not to get off into the budget too terribly deep, but Parks and Wildlife did pretty good. They got most of the things that they had asked for in the budget. Again, all the sporting goods sales tax was adopted and appropriated. Uh, we are looking for some additional revenue in Fund 9, and that's going to be an ongoing discussion uh, in the coming years about Fund 9 and the revenue going into there. But critical repairs for our hatcheries and some of our state parks, those things are again seen as things necessary, and were money was appropriated to Parks and Wildlife for those efforts. So overall, it was a good year for the Parks and Wildlife Department. Uh, we, as an association, were advocating for many of these items listed here under the budget process, communicating with the members of the Finance and Appropriations Committee and the subcommittees that look at that stuff to try to ensure that the Parks and Wildlife has the tools that they need to assist landowners on the landscape out there. It's just critically important to maintain those programs that we've worked so hard with the department to get done over the years. So I'm happy to answer any of those questions about any of those particular programs. Uh, One thing I would like to mention, and that is that the legislature is back in session. The governor called the legislature back in session about a week or two ago. Not a week or two, last week, sorry. This week. Getting very confused with my days, folks. I'm sorry. They started Monday. Bills have been filed. A very specific list of items which are on the call for the special session. They're going to deal with flooding and emergency response after the the issues out in Kerr County in Central Texas, the July 4th flood, to try to address what can be done out there. They're going to be looking at THC laws after the governor vetoed SB 3 by Senator Perry. That fight will go on. Some additional tax stuff. I'm sure I've missed a bunch of stuff. But overall, Texas Wildlife Association, uh, we had a good session this session. No harm was done. We worked very closely with our counterparts in other landowner agencies. We had not only our boots on the ground, but we had an additional opportunity with some landowners to communicate with our leadership offices in the capital there to kind of accentuate what we did in February. So that came off really well. Mignon, I'm sorry, I've just kind of blabbered on for most of the hour. Tell me what I've missed. Grade my paper, please. Tell these folks what I missed out there.
I really don't think you missed anything. I think a lot of people on this webinar today were at the Capitol with us,
I agree.
and we want to say thanks. And it's good for y'all to see up front and personal, how chaotic it can be and also see that when the legislature gets here in January, every odd numbered year, they've already come with some pretty firm ideas in their head. And um, then it's our job to talk about the bad ideas and help push those good ideas. But really, next session has already started in the sense of there's interim hearings on a variety of topics. And Joey and I watch all of those, and we try to shape things before we ever get to a session. There were a ton of new members this session, more in the House, 31 in the House, really 3 in the Senate. And it was kind of like riding a wild bronco, with some of these folks and their bold ideas. But we can't do our job without y'all, and you really matter to this process. And if you ever get an opportunity in your local area to go to someone's town hall, please go. Spend 30 minutes and go. You don't have to stay for the whole thing, but try to introduce yourself. Tell them that you have this affiliation and care about the Wildlife Association. I think we've got an awesome brand, and a lot of legislators recognize it, and they've worked with us for years. But this process is dynamic, and there are new people coming in all the time. I guess the final thing before we hear from you all about any questions, their staffs are dynamic too. They turn over frequently. Someone decides they've worked in the House and then they want to work in the Senate. So the good part and the interesting part about all that, a lot of staff is recycled. And so the relationships that you make when you first meet them, you kind of stick with people in this business for years and years, oftentimes. Or sometimes they're a staffer and they go and become a legislator. That's happened many times. So interfacing with those people locally and during the session at our Boots on the Ground event, it really matters. We get feedback from the times that you have interaction with legislators. So thank you for doing that. And let's hear if y'all have any questions about anything in particular.
There was a question or comment rather brought up in the chat, and I actually have it written down here as well, having to do with New World screwworm, and if there's anything in the legislature coming up that addresses that emerging issue for not only wildlife enthusiasts, ranchers, landowners.
Awesome question. Just briefly, there was a hearing on that very topic Monday of this week, and Jonathan Letts, our past president, testified. He was asked to testify because, again, we have a stake in all of that. He did a great job. They were beginning that process to get all legislators up to speed on the topic. So you will see, I think, obviously activity from the feds in cooperation with the state in the coming weeks and months. And some things may turn into legislation for next session.
Yeah, no doubt. The governor has established a task force with Animal Health Commission and Parks and Wildlife to do anything that can be done to address, this impending invasion of screwworm flies. It's coming, and we've just got to do our best to fight it back and push back. I know that the legislature, as Mignon indicated, they're very keen on this. They're watching it very closely. It's something that they recognize as the dangers that it brings with it. So,
Thank you. We have another question about what landowners and sportsmen and sportswomen should prioritize ahead of the 90th session.
well, I think it's many of the things that we talked about today, many of the bills that were on that list. We'll see them again. They'll be back. Some good, some bad. The issues I can tell you for the 30 years I've been messing around in this stuff, you think you'd get something solved after a long enough period of time, but it never goes away. Water is going to be on the forefront of everything, we do as a state. We are running short of water in this state. So it's going to be imperative that we stay vigilant as landowners out there to ensure that the municipal users don't come out and take our water, so to speak. So we're gonna have to watch that closely. Wildlife issues will always be on the table. Chronic wasting disease is not going away. We will be continuing to ensure that we're doing our best job we can to protect wild animals and wild places out there from chronic wasting disease through the limitation of movement of animals and the identification of those processes by Parks and Wildlife wherever that disease occurs. But it will be more of the same, I think. As this state continues to grow, we've been on a huge growth spurt in recent years. All of those growths, industries, people, housetops, all of that takes places and spaces and resources to operate. You can't run a business in this state without, having water and energy and all of the things that go along with that business. So it's up to the state, to do the best job they can managing and delivering it. And many of those things that they need, they're occurring out on the rural landscape where TWA's members like to hang out. So we'll always be out there doing our best to protect what we've been doing for years. So I don't have anything, I can't tell you anything specific just yet, but it'll be more of the same, just like it almost always is.
That's why I would say stick close to your association, because we will communicate what's hot and what's not on topics and events. And a lot of times local events will animate what they care about when something happens in their district. When something happens like these floods, going to have reams of legislation about what property owners should do for alarm systems, etc. But I'd stick close to your association and try to meet somebody local in your area that's a state representative or a senator. I mean, this is the time that they need us the most, is when they're about to run for reelection, and that cycle is coming up. Everybody who wants to run again must file starting December 8th. And let me tell you, you've never met anybody so friendly as when they start running for office. They want to meet you. They want to talk to you. They want to hear what you have to say. And if you do a simple thing like going to a coffee, there's a state senator here in Austin. She goes to a different coffee house every Friday. And I understand that's an urban situation, but legislators do things like that all the time.
Yeah. Chairman Guillen does Dairy Queens all over South Texas.
Yeah. There's nothing fancy about this. And if you sat down at the Dairy Queen across from Ryan Guillen, he's going to remember you. And he's going to say to me and Joey, hey, I met one of your members. And it's going to mean the world to him. A lot of this does not have to be expensive or fancy. You can go have a dipped cone with Ryan Guillen. And that helps us do our jobs, because, any association, you've got to put a face on it. And y'all are our faces. Joey and I are Austin faces, but y'all got to help us, make the gears turn.
Thank you very much for that explanation. There's one other question about if there's been any conversation up at the Capitol regarding the migration of others, non-Texans into Texas and its strain on our natural resources over time.
Uh, it depends on how you describe non-Texans. I think uh, there's some concerns, about immigration uh, pressures that are going on along the border. There's concerns about foreign nationals having access to sensitive properties. Um, but the, you know, Texas miracle, as they describe it, is still in full swing here. Um, I think, the government's happy that people are moving from California and coming over to Texas, and it does put a strain on our resources. There's no question. We're seeing it in every aspect of our lives these days, and it's we're all going to have to come together and find an equitable solution to it all. So I would say yes and no. There is concern about the continued swell of our Texas population, but they're also happy to have the people that are moving and the businesses that they bring with them coming in. So, but if you're talking about illegal immigration, that is without question on the tip of the leadership's issues. We've seen some, things have kind of slowed down on the border, and that's good. So I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you for your insight there. I don't see any new questions. I think we've got them all answered. And if anybody has a last minute question, feel free to post it in the chat. But if not, then we really appreciate your time, Joey and Mignon. Thank you so much for spending, our lunch hour with us today and sharing all of the important updates that Texas Wildlife Association has been working on in this past legislative session and the things that we can look forward to moving forward. Again, thank you. I appreciate it. And before everybody leaves, I'd like to, Mignon, I'm going to stop sharing your screen. I'm going to share our next Wild at Work webinar coming up in August for you guys that are here. If there's an interest in Pocket Prairies and Pollinators in August, we'll be getting together on the 20th at noon for Pocket Prairies with Elizabeth Tidwell with AgriLife Extension. I hope everybody has a great Wednesday. Enjoy your afternoon, and thank you again for joining us at Wild at Work. Thank you, Joey.
Thank you
Thank you,
all.
Mignon.
Thank you. It
Thank
was
you. I
fun.
appreciate it.
We had fun. Thank you.
Thank you.